Hello, BookTube. Well, it's Friday, and that's time for Friday Reads. Friday Reads in our little corner of BookTube has taken quite a beating lately, as quite a few of you have had trouble bearing down on books. You've had trouble concentrating on the books that are the solace of reading. They seem to slip through your fingers because we're all preoccupied with the news and with self-quarantining and with worrying about these things that we never had to worry about before, and even just cabin fever. Uh, all the things that we once upon a time thought, well, that would be perfect for reading. I would get so much reading done. And lately, in the last month, a lot of people that I've been talking to, a lot of booktubers and a lot of booktube watchers, have been telling me the same thing, which is no, I'm just not. It's just not there. I believe that it will come back. For me, it has never completely left. So I wanted to go through some books with you for a normal, relatively normal Friday Reads. I want to show you. We'll start with the ones that I have been rereading, and we'll finish up with the ones that I am going to be reading this weekend that are new to me. So we have 6 books, and the first one is YA. This is I don't think it has. No, it doesn't have a pub sheet in it, but it doesn't matter anyway because I don't know that the dates would be real anymore. I reread this. I got an advance copy and read it, and then I got the finished copy and reread it. It's by Kristen Simmons. It's a YA novel called Scammed. They're all lying, but so is she. It didn't do anything for me. It was well enough, competently done, but you can tell just from the cover that this is mean kids in high school, mean kids triumph over other mean kids, the psychology of mean kids, the redemption of mean kids, and I just, I can read you a little about it. This was a sequel to a book that I didn't read. It was a sequel to a book called The Deceivers, and maybe that was the reason. Maybe I needed to read that first one. But let me read you a bit about it, just in case it appeals to you. It might appeal to you. Bryn Hilder is living a life she never dreamed possible. She lives in a mansion, getting a top-rate education at Vale Hall. She has friends and an almost boyfriend. Anything she wants, she can have. The only catch? To stay in this life, she has to help the director of Vale Hall take down the bad guys of Sikawa City by collecting secrets and running cons. Getting everything she wants and fighting evil doesn't seem like such a bad deal. The thing is, she's not so convinced anymore that Dr. Odin is really going after bad people after all, and the friends and almost boyfriend that have made her life so different are all liars and con artists. So can she trust any of them? Is it real? I believe that Scammed is the sequel to The Deceivers, and maybe I just needed to start with that one. I don't think I ever read The Deceivers. This none of it worked for me. So the first of the read books for my Friday Reads is might work more for one of you than it did for me. Definitely isn't an example of the kind of YA that I really like. Then this next one is a reread, and it's a reread because I just read a New York Review of Books review of this book that I thought was so thought-provoking that it sent me back to the book. So I reread it, and I found a lot more in the book. It resonates a lot more now, of course, than it did when I first read it. This is by Dale Barron, and it's called It Came From Something Awful: How a Toxic Troll Army Accidentally Memed Donald Trump into Office. And this is about 4chan and 8chan, and it's about memes, and it's about an internet subculture that can be far more powerful, far more persuasive than normal people like to think. So it's all about that, but there's another thread that runs throughout this book, and that is the stupendous hollowness of the Trump campaign and by extension the Trump administration. The incredible hollowness of it, how it's full of people who don't have any idea what they're doing, no idea what they're talking about, no idea that this was ever going to happen to them, no contingency plans of any kind, and just a daily operating budget of Dunning-Kruger ignorance. That you see, there's a thread that runs throughout this that builds of those people in that organization mistaking the troll army and its after effects for a popular groundswell, conflating the two. It ends up being a fascinating examination of all of that. Very disturbing, especially in light of current events. But it was a joy to reread it, just a joy. It went up in my estimation. And then these next two are rereads of a very different kind. They are very old rereads. I have read the constituent elements of these things and these volumes many, many, many times. And that is the Science Fiction Hall of Fame. This is Volume 2, Part A and Part B, edited by Ben Bova. And Volume 2 deals with great science fiction novellas, not short stories. Volume 1 was also in 2 volumes and dealt with great science fiction short stories. And I had paperbacks of these things eons ago. When did these come out? In the 1970s? 1973. I had paperbacks of these that I read until they fell apart, until they were powder. Every time I went to a used bookstore and saw them, I would always grab them. You almost never saw all of them together. And a year ago, something like that, around a year ago, I was up in Vermont and I was used book hunting with Mark Richardson of Richardson Reads, and we came across hardcover volumes of Volume 2 of the Science Fiction Hall of Fame. And of course, being a librarian and a book fancier, he grabbed them, and that made his old paperbacks redundant. He had a mass market paperback of Volume 1, of Volume 2, Volume A, and a library style reinforced hardcover of Volume 2, Volume B, and he just gave these to me. Not Volume 1, Volume A and Volume B, about science fiction short stories, but Volume 2, which is novellas. And I found these. I was rearranging shelves the other day, and I found these, and they just called to me. I sank into them. I sank back into them because these have such great things in them. Volume 1 has, let's see here, C.M. Kornbluth, who's largely forgotten. It has Universe by Robert Heinlein. It has Nerves by Lester Del Rey, who went on to be a very influential publisher. It has The Ballad of Lost Semel by Cordwainer Smith, a great story that I intentionally did not read this time around because I know it so well. I wanted to concentrate on other things. This first volume reprints the entirety of The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. It also has Who Goes There by John Campbell, which is the inspiration for The Thing, the original movie adaptation of The Thing, with James Arness in a giant carrot suit as the monster, and then the great Kurt Russell remake of The Thing. That's Volume 1, and then Volume 2, which is where I've been spending a great deal of time in the last couple of days, has The Martian Way by Isaac Asimov. It has Earthman Come Home by James Blish. The Spectre General by Theodore Cogswell, who's also been largely forgotten. It has The Machine Stops by E.M. Forster, who's no longer thought of as any kind of pioneer in science fiction or speculative fiction. It has The Midas Plague by Fred Pohl. But the thing that I reread just recently, just before I made this video, was In Hiding by Wilmar Shiras, about a little boy who is hiding his true nature. His true nature is that he is incredibly intelligent. He is more than adult level intelligent. And his school psychiatrist eventually figures this out. And at the end of the story, eventually figures out why the boy is so advanced. And it's a solution straight out of its time. Let's just put it that way. But the story itself is just terrific. Just terrific. I've been jumping all around in stories in these 2 volumes and having a great time doing it. Just a great time. And then we'll get to the 2 that I haven't read yet, that I'll be reading this weekend. I've made dips and pieces into both of these, but I haven't actually sat down, pencil in hand, and read them. The first one is by the great Jonathan Bate. This is Radical Wordsworth. I've made inroads on this book a couple of times, but the inroads told me that it's brilliant. I had no doubt of that to begin with, but I want to really sit down with it, pencil in hand, and really just tear it to pieces. The same thing with this other one. This is Paul Jankowski. This is All Against All, the long winter of 1933, when all the tumblers fell into place for this weird fascist fringe group to take control of one of the most advanced and powerful countries in the Western world. And I likewise have dipped into this enough so that I could, for instance, recommend it. But I know that it's really good, but I want to really dig into it with pencil in hand and start to really make inroads on it. And both of those have publication dates for later in April, but I haven't gone online to see. It could be that the dates on both of these have been pushed back. Publishers have been doing that for quite a few books. So that is my Friday reads. We have Radical Wordsworth and All Against All. Then we have It Came From Something Awful. Boy, oh boy, I recommend this, especially you online wonks. Then Scammed, which I'm probably doing a disservice. I probably need to read the first book in order to make a competent evaluation of the second book. And then the Science Fiction Hall of Fame, specifically in this case, the 2 volumes on novellas. Because I don't have the 2 volumes on short stories. Boy, I wish I did, but I have plenty of other science fiction short story collections that are going to have to tide me over. Those plus my huge backstock of Analog and Asimov's. I can always go back to those and read stories that I might have skipped. But that is my Friday reads. I would love to know what you're reading. I would also love to know if you're having trouble reading. If you're one of the many people I've been talking to who's in that position and just can't make yourself sit down and read, at the very least, feel free to tell me about it, to bend my ear about it. I'm here to listen. So I'd love to hear all about that, and I will wrap up this video for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.